Hello, folks. You're listening to episode 15 of your favorite sports betting podcast, A Mug's Game. And this is your host, Smeg. How are you doing, folks? That's right, we're back. It's 2020. It's the first podcast of the year. Very exciting times. It's also the first Grand Slam in tennis of the year, which means that's what we're going to be covering for this whole podcast. Just me, Smeg, by myself. Obviously, hoping to get Ronnie back for the next podcast, where we will be covering, I'm sure, the knockout stages of the Champions League. Would be maybe looking for some more outright bets there, maybe occurring in the Premier League and also the GAA National Leagues, the hurling, GAA and hurling. So, but for now, you're just going to have to make do with myself. And this probably is a podcast that is more geared towards the tennis nuts. But look at it's, of course, if it's new to the podcast, yes, it's a podcast where we'll be breaking down the draw and talking about who we might see as the potential winners of each quarter and so on. We will be doing so with a view to maybe finding some value bets to have. But if you're not interested in sports betting, I'm sure you'll still be able to get something, and hopefully still be able to get something from the podcast, because look at I'm very passionate about tennis, and regardless of whether I see a bet as a value or not, or see something where I'm still going to break down the draws and talk about who I think are the better the eventual winners and stuff like that. But what we'll do is we'll go straight to the quarter betting in the men's draws, and then we might talk overall about the outright betting afterwards. So you might hear some kind of sheets and stuff like that in the background, little crumpling of sheets and paper. I'll be honest with you, I've been flat out researching for these quarter bets and for these match bets and all these sort of things. Been absolutely exhausted, obviously, trying to watch as much tennis as I possibly can in the middle of the night in Australia, while still having to do my day job and stuff to the best of my ability. So yeah, basically that's the situation. Exhausted, have done a lot of work for it, and hopefully we'll be able to get some winning bets out of all this work we've done for it. Otherwise we're going to feel like a proper fool. So let's just go straight on to the quarter betting in the men's. Okay, so quarter one, of course, world number one, Rafael Nadal. Now he is priced at 8-15 to win this quarter. I think you might be able to get him at 4-6 somehow, but even at that is zilch value. That was very poor value. Very, two probably easy enough starters for him to get him warmed into it. Delian should take care of him, no problem. Probably Joao Souza in the second rounder. And then he's got Pablo Carreño Busta, who not the easiest third round opponent you're going to get. He's going to get a lot of balls back. He'll work you at least, but he should be able to take care of Pablo. And then it's probably either Kyrgios or Kachanov, who he has had trouble with in the past, out of both players. Kachanov obviously, pushed him really hard in the US Open 2018. That's right. Kyrgios, we don't even need to talk about their history. They have a lot of history. Kyrgios has had a few wins against them. Nadal beat him at Wimbledon, of course, but Kyrgios in Australia in front of his home crowd is always a dangerous player. And then possibly Thiem. And Thiem, they've had some great battles over the past while. Thiem's beaten them a few times on clay. Obviously, Nadal had the big win had the big win in Roland Garros, but it seems like Thiem is getting closer and closer to him. And of course, the last time they played in a slam on the hard courts, it was US Open and went to a final set tiebreak. So look, there's not really a whole lot of value there in Nadal. Like, Thiem is just getting better and better, and if it does happen to be Thiem that he reaches in the quarterfinals, I see that as a 50-50 match almost. Maybe Nadal as a slight favourite, but that's going to be it's not the easiest quarter apart from the first few matches there. If you look at even Thiem himself, regarding his draw, he's got Manarino, Ramos, Anderson, Monfils, Felix FAA, Felix Aliassime. I find it very hard to pronounce, so I'm just going to call him FAA. And then so he'd probably play Manarino first, Ramos, Anderson in the third round. Now Anderson, with Thiem and Anderson, that's a really tough third round opponent, possible opponent for team. Anderson played some great stuff at the ATP Cup. He's been quoted as saying that his body is finally feeling great again. He obviously had serious injury problems from last year. And on a fast surface, he's going to be a handle. And of course, the team isn't crazy about playing against big services. He likes guys who can give him lots of rhythm. Although the last time they played, and then in the Grand Slam, a team handily beat Anderson in the US Open 2018, hammered them basically. And this is the year that just a few months after Anderson had reached the final at Wimbledon. But this is a faster surface. It's one of the cruelest third round draws any of the top players can ask for there. But if he got through that, Monfils or FAA, I'd fancy against either of those. FAA is obviously a wonderful talent and has got great potential, but it's probably a bit too soon for him. Monfils' body rarely holds up, and then so like if he got through the third round, fourth round, getting to the fifth round against Rafa, you know what I'm saying about that. Now, team can be backed at 6-1 to win that quarter. And I don't love it either. In fact, I think maybe the better bet is 25-1 on him to win out the tournament. I think that's not too bad at all. I remember thinking having backed team at 40-1 for the US Open, and admittedly the surface would suit him a bit better. It's a bit slower, a bit of a higher bounce in the US Open, but thinking, geez, what a steal that I've just gotten at 40-1, and then straight after the ATP finals, he was down to something like 14-1 to win both Australian Open and the US Open, but he's back down to 25-1. Didn't have an unbelievably good ATP tournament, but he admits himself he's always a very slow starter, and he's quoted as saying that he's a slow starter. He just needed to get some matches under his belt. So yeah, look, if you were, we'll talk. I just think that the Anderson factor, and the fact that he'd probably have to come through Nadal, and also the fact that he hasn't done that well in Australia. He's complained about the dry air in Australia before. He is saying he's feeling great, he's feeling fit and ready for it now, but there are some things that put me off him. If I was to back him at all, it would be an outright instead of the quarter betting, because he could easily lose first round, and if he is getting as far as the quarterfinals, then he's a real contender. Like, he's not just a 25-1 shot. So we'll talk about that when we get to the outright betting. So look, I don't see any other value. I'm looking through the draw in the quarter betting. I don't see any other value. I just decided I'd talk through that. I think you still have to make Nadal, if you want my opinion, regardless of betting who's going to win it. I think you still have to make Nadal favourite. He has his first two easy enough matches to get through. And having said, even though Kyrgios and Kachanov are tricky, he still has more often not been able to take care of them. No guaranteed Kyrgios would get there anyway. Maybe Kachanov would beat him, and then team, no guaranteed he'd get there, and you'd still make Rafa a slight favourite, I suppose, over team. But it's just a no bet for me on all counts. Quarter two, obviously, this is the big quarter with Medvedev. Now Medvedev has proven to be the real deal. He's only a matter of time before he wins a Grand Slam, but his price at 6-4 I found here on the exchange, but I've seen a lot of places are at like 6-5 to win this quarter, and that's, wow, that seems like a bit of an overreaction, hold on a sec, yeah. It seems like a bit of an overreaction to me. TFO, his route would be TFO, and he's priced at 1-33 to beat TFO. TFO got to the quarterfinals last year and also did, beat Anderson in the first round. And he did so on the back of having come in with very little form himself. So it's a bit of a crazy price for Medvedev to be 1-33 against TFO in the first round. TFO, despite TFO's bad form, potential second round with Kopfer, if that's how you pronounce it, or Kopfer, who actually gave him a really tough match at the US Open. So not the easiest one either. Maybe Tsonga in the third round. If Tsonga is in form, that could be a tough match. If not really. Then Stan Wawrinka in the next round. and in the fourth round potentially, and then the big man in form Rublev. I know, I've been asked about Rublev. Has he got a chance? It's very interesting to see how Rublev does. He's obviously won back-to-back tournaments in Doha and Adelaide. He's in super form, serving better than I've seen him serve. He's got a massive forehand. Second serve maybe is a little bit vulnerable, but he's got a big game. And it'd just be interesting. Now, I backed him a few times in the past and he's let me down, so maybe I'm a little bit biased against him for that reason. For example, at the US Open, backed him at 25-1 to win that quarter. It completely opened up, and then he completely had a stinker of a match against Berrettini. So is he, am I going to say that he's still not capable of doing that? He does throw in these stinkers every now and then, just when you think he's finally solid. He can, and when he loses, he can lose really badly. Hard to know. It just seems like he's a different man. He seems like a man on a mission at the moment. Obviously, with those 2 wins, he could have easily have collapsed against Felix FAA in that semi-final against Adelaide. Down 3-0 after losing the second set tiebreak, and he came back and won it. And I think he's been talking about his mentality. He's been quoted saying, that I want to have a mentality to lead like the big guns now, and that's maybe a sign of him getting there. So he's got every chance. He's got every chance of getting to that. Of getting to that quarter final at least, and he's 9-1. So I wouldn't put anybody off that 9-1, but I'm not going to back it myself. Maybe it's because he couldn't do in an easier draw 25-1 at the US Open, and maybe I still have sour grapes over that. But look, it's interesting. It's good to see someone else kind of stepping up and showing themselves as a potential challenger. So we'll have to see what it is. But like I said, if Rublev's there, he's another very tough opponent for Medvedev. The idea for Medvedev to be 6-5, wow! And even when we played Stan at the US Open, that was a match he won in 4 sets. But there were times you kind of felt like if Stan really did bring his A game in that match, that he had the winning of it. There were times when it felt like it was on his racket. So look, Medvedev, I think it's a real deal, but this is a trickier draw than it seems. And I'm going to tip up. I haven't mentioned any prices, but I'm going to mention the fact that I already have tipped up Stan Wawrinka at 22-1 with Paddy Powers. They made a mistake with his price, basically, at 22-1 for him to be for him to win quarter 2. Now 22-1 for a man. He's been to 2 of the last 3 Grand Slam quarterfinals. Obviously, he had that big epic win in the French Open against Tsitsipas. That was a sign of, wow, Stan has really come back to form. Doesn't ever really do that well at Wimbledon, but then he came back, did brilliantly at the beat Djokovic. And beat Djokovic, I know he sort of retired injured, but it was a bit dodgy that time. It felt like maybe Djokovic... it was kind of a case of deja vu for Djokovic, knowing that he finds it tough against this guy. But I hope I didn't upset Djokovic fans. Myself, I'm in a part of a tennis group, and they know that I'm very respectful of Djokovic in general, and that I often come and stick up for him, when people are trying to bring him down. But like as I don't want to veer off on a tangent, but yeah, basically. Stan has shown in the slams that he had a relatively injury-free year last year after having a couple of years of injury really wrecking his career, and he's sort of shown signs of coming back to the old Stan, and his basically his quarter is doable. Like, it's a Zoomer. I know Zoomer has a 2-1 head-to-head record against him, but in kind of Mickey Mouse tournaments, and maybe Seppi in the second round or Kecmanovic, but I don't see possibly Kecmanovic, but I don't think Kecmanovic. I think he's kind of a bit of overrated myself. Isner in the third round possibly, and that's Stan doesn't love playing against the big servers, but Isner isn't in brilliant form despite the fact he did get to the semi-final. I think was it at let me think now. Hobart, yeah, it was Auckland. Sorry, Auckland. Just last week, he was basically played off the court by Humbert, and just has never really done that well at Australia. And then the thing will be Medvedev in the fourth round, and obviously that would be the big one. But there were times where he looked like the match could have been on his record against Medvedev in the quarterfinals and at the US Open. So look, the point is, at 22-1, if you follow the Twitter, it's a very nice price for us to be on Stan at, because Stan is going to be there or thereabouts. It can easily see this big matchup between himself and Medvedev in the fourth round, and then probably he's favoured against whoever he plays in the next round. Now we forgot to mention Zverev, who is, obviously was before Medvedev and Tsitsipas and all this. He was touted as the next real big thing, and he's never really pushed on. But and he's never really done that well at slams. But he could be one that could be in the quarterfinals waiting either. If he finally finds some gear. Now he has had his personal problems and hasn't always seemed to be in the best of form and all that kind of stuff. But he's definitely one that could maybe get in the way of Rublev getting in the quarterfinals at least. And so look, if he was Zverev in the quarterfinals, I wouldn't fear him. If it was Rublev, if I was Stan, I wouldn't fear him. It'd be the first time for Rublev to get there, and maybe the mileage could possibly catch up on Rublev too. He's played a lot of tennis of late. So look, 22-1. Hopefully you're on it. We put a half point on at 22-1, and his price has already been slashed to 9-1. So that's one of our. At least we beat the market there, and you definitely have great chances of covering opportunities, and that it's great to get a price where you really can cover, but obviously don't cover until maybe the fourth round, especially if it's Medvedev. Okay, third quarter. Let me see, is the Federer quarter, and I'm going to I'm going to just talk about another bet for you here, and I'm actually going to bet on Federer to win this quarter at 5-4. I know it sounds very, very skinny, but you just look at his draw and you have to say it's very, very hard to see who's going to beat him. He's got Steve Johnson in the first round. Steve Johnson, it's a pity now. Steve Johnson won a challenger event just there yesterday, warm-up tournament, and who did he beat in the final? So the Italian guy, I can't think of his name, good player though. He's got Johnson. It's a pity Johnson didn't. He would have been someone I would have been looking to do in a match bet. If he landed someone else in the draw, but Johnson's not the type of player with that slice backhand. Federer eats up that type of player. Normally Krajinovic, second round, no problem for Federer. Really can't see any problems. Hurkacz, he's a tricky player. But at the same time, as third round opponents go, I think he's still a little bit overrated. It could be Hurkacz or Humbert. Humbert obviously won in Auckland. But these are guys, it's very hard to see a fresh Federer, losing this. Now Federer, I know he's getting on, but there really hasn't been that much sign of that decline. He hasn't done great in the US Open the last few years, but probably because at that stage of the tournament there's been a bit of mileage. I don't know why it is that he hasn't done well at the US Open, but he's played well at the Australian Open. Obviously won in 2018 and 2017. Last year got beaten by Tsitsipas, who was kind of a man possessed. Maybe Federer underperformed a little bit, but it wasn't a poor performance by any means. And obviously, how brilliantly played to get to the Wimbledon final last year. Played some great stuff in the final or the World Tour finals. I mean, although he lost the semi-finals to Tsitsipas, I don't see a Tsitsipas in this draw. I don't see there isn't even a Tsitsipas in this draw to beat Federer. The most dangerous person is Shapovalov, who's actually found some form, but Federer has done well against Shapovalov in the past. Maybe Dimitrov obviously beat Federer at the US Open, but Federer wasn't himself. Federer is going to be very fresh. And then in the last round, it's Berrettini, and Federer absolutely owns Berrettini. He owned him at the ATP World Tour Finals. He owned him at Wimbledon. So look, just listen to this: Johnson, Krajinovic, probably Humbert or Hurkacz, maybe Dimitrov or Shapovalov, and then Berrettini. That's as hard as that's the worst case scenario. How it's just so hard to see Federer in the form that he's in. or the fact that he's fresh, it's hard to see him lose. And so I think I'm going to take an odds against Price there. 5-4 might sound skinny, but I just don't see who beats him. He really is going to have to show up and really underperform badly to lose in this quarter. So 5-4, 2 points or 2.5 points on Roger Federer to win that quarter. And finally, the last quarter is with Novak Djokovic. Now Novak, I saw like prices like him at 1-3. Look, it's not, to me, it's not valid. There have been slams in the past where I've done a kind of a double on Novak and Rafa together, but I'd be very fearful of Rafa. Maybe Novak has a better chance, but look at his draw. You've got Struff in the first round. Now it's not a nice first round opponent by any means, but he should be well able to take. He's taken care of him easily in the past. And then possibly Gunas Zavaran in the second. That should be one where Novak handily beats the handicap there. Dan Evans in the third round. Dan Evans in great form, but not. He's hard to see how Evans can beat Novak. Diego Schwartzman possibly the fourth round, or Bautista Schwartzman, Bautista Gut. Look, Bautista Gut has given him problems in the past, but more often than not, Novak gets. And it's the same with Diego, but more often than not, Novak gets the better of them. And then probably, look, I'd say Tsitsipas is the one guy that would be interesting to see. Obviously, Tsitsipas beat him a couple of months ago. He won Tsitsipas won the ATP World Finals. Wasn't as good a form as Novak was at the ATP Finals a few weeks ago. But Tsitsipas is the danger one, and that would be the one which would put me off any money on Novak. But look, it's you got to say Novak is going to win that quarter. But I'm not so sure he's going to win the tournament. So let's just have a look at the outrights here. Novak is 6-5, Nadal 9-2, Medvedev 8-1, Federer's 10s, Tsitsipas 16s, Thiem 25s, Zverev 50s, Rublev has gone into 50s, Bautista Gut 80s, Anderson 100s, Felix 150s, Stan is Wawrinka is at 66s. I'm going to talk, and then you have Marin Cilic at 250-1. There, like some crazy prices. Okay, so just. Look, Novak at 6-5. At the end of the day, he should get through the first 4 rounds, but then he'd have to play Tsitsipas, Federer, and then maybe Nadal or someone like maybe a Stan. Hopefully, for our point of view, maybe a Medvedev. Now first of all, he wouldn't be that confident with him, with Federer. Tsitsipas could possibly beat him. Federer could beat him. And he'd be a big favourite against Nadal. But obviously it's never, if Nadal plays his very, very best tennis, Nadal could beat him. But you'd always fancy Novak. Nadal hasn't beaten Novak or Federer on any surface outside of clay for 6 years. 6 years. That's obviously any of the tennis nuts that are listening are well aware of that stat, but it's still a very worrying stat, I suppose, if you're a Nadal fan. So yeah, look, out of all those 9-2 Nadal, that is no value in that. He's going to have to, as I said before, what did we say? He's going to have to get through maybe a catching off a Thiem, and then a Medvedev even before he got to the final, even before he got to play a Novak. So I just think that is an absolutely scandalous price. Medvedev 8-1. I have a friend who's on him at 66-1. I'm as jealous. But 8-1, you can't. Look, he's the real deal. It wouldn't surprise me to see him get to that final at all, but I still can't be backing him 8-1. Federer 10s. Well, the thing about it is, he's going to win his quarter 5-4. So why would I not back him at 10s? Look, I just think he'd have to beat Novak and possibly Rafa. And maybe Medvedev. I don't really fancy him against the other big guns, really. I don't really fancy him against the big guns. Possibly a little bit. I think it's 50-50 with him and Rafa, but I think he's still a big underdog off the grass against Novak. Although it's not a big underdog, he's an underdog. So I'm just happy enough with the 5-4 there on the quarter draw. Tsitsipas 16s. seems to me about right. You know, he has to be taken seriously, but at the same time, it's a big step up. He's going to have to beat probably Novak even to get into the semi-finals, and that's before maybe he'd have to play Federer, and he can beat Federer. He's shown that he can. He bet him last year, and he bet him at the ATP World Tour Finals. So look, it's I wouldn't put anyone off it, but I don't love it myself. I think the only price out of the big guns, as I said, was Team at 25s, and it's not. I said, of course, that he's got a tough draw, but you know, it's just more the point that Team has shown himself to be world class in the last couple of years, and basically on all surfaces apart from grass, and I think he will show himself to be really good at grass in the future as well too. He won Indian Wells, which is like the 5th slam last year. I actually had money on him at 66 to 1, and got to the ATP World Tour Finals, you know, on a fast indoor court, which nobody would have ever have thought, and was really unlucky to lose that final set tiebreak, you know. So at 25 to 1, he's the real deal, and I think he can actually beat anyone. And so if there's not much change, you might want to see what he's like in the first round. If there's not much change in his price and he's still around the 20s mark, maybe I might put a few quid on Team, because out of all those big guns I like. Now Zverev at 50s, that's a fall from grace. I mean, he has had his personal problems, but Jesus, he can be got at the exchange, and you always look for these prices. The Betfair exchange at 80 to 1, and that's like, I had to put a few quid in that, like 80 to 1. Maybe he'll catch a bit of fire, and it would be hedgeable as well. Like, the thing about it is, because if Zverev starts to go deep and find a bit of form, he'll be rated in the pricing against some of the bigger guns, because it's Zverev, and so you might have some hedging opportunities. Silic was 250 to 1 with Unibet. Now, Silic had a horrible year last year. He had some probably injury problems, but he's played a few matches at the ATP Cup and looked a bit better, and has talked about training really, really hard over the off season, and that he's much more ready for this season than last season. And we can't forget, just over a year ago, he was in or just 2 years ago, he made it to 2 Grand Slam finals. Like, he got to the 2018 Wimbledon final, or he got it to the 2018 Australian Open final, and then the Wimbledon before he got to that final. So look, he is a class act, and I got him at 300s on the exchange, and I think even though he's getting a bit old, it's still way too big for someone like Marin Cilic, you know. So I think if anybody's interested in putting a small little few quid on Cilic, it doesn't really matter what his draw is. It's at 250 to 1. That's a bit of an insane price. Stan Wawrinka can be got at over 100 to 1, and if you thought he was value at 22 to 1 to win his draw on the exchange, you can look at. I would recommend a quarter point on Stan at 100 to 1. On the exchange, a quarter point in Cilic at 250 to 1 on the exchange. Kachanov is also available at 250 to 1. Like, this time last year, he was about 25 to 1, maybe 33 to 1. So he didn't obviously didn't have a great year, but at 250 to 1, it's a bit crazy. And even Felix is at 200 to 1. I had to put a few quid on all those prices. Felix is obviously very, very talented. They're all crazy prices. So just look at I'd say get a Betfair exchange account and look at some of those prices. You can it's definitely some value to be had there. So anyway, I'm done with going through the men's draw. We're going to jump straight into the women's draw. And we're going to talk through the quarter betting. Now, I have tipped up Barty just after winning the French Open, as she was still 18 to 1 to win with Sky Bet to win the Australian Open, and she's 8 to 1 now. So we're very happy with that bet as an outright bet. Still, I'm not convinced that she can win, but at 18 to 1, I still feel like it got ahead of the market at least. Look at her draw, quarter one. It's the world number one. She's a likeable player, Barty, likeable girl. She plays Severenko, Peterson, possibly Peterson, maybe Sasnovich or Risk. Peterson or maybe Sasnovich. Is it Sasnovich? Probably Peterson second round anyway. Maybe Risk or Martic next round, and Keys or Kvitova in the quarterfinals, or maybe Rybakina possibly. So she got Tsurenko, then Peterson, then Sasnovich, or Sasnovich, or maybe Rybakina, and then it may be Risk or Martin, and then maybe Keys or Kvitova now, or Martic. Sorry. So should take care of Tsurenko, should take care of Peterson, no problem. Sasnovich or Rybakina, probably Rybakina. She's won a title there in, I think it was Hobart, was it? Yeah. And she's obviously an up and coming player, but she's a lot of mileage over the last 2 weeks, just like Rublev, and probably still not quite ready to jump up onto the Barty's level just yet. Like she did win that final coming through scraps of matches against the likes of Cabrera and Heather Watson and so on. Like, so she's not at Barty's level yet. So what we're really looking at is Martic or maybe Alison Risk in the fourth round. Risk is a dangerous one. Risk beat her at Wimbledon, and which was a killer, because myself and a friend had her backed at 33-1 from earlier on in the year, and she had gone into about 5-1 at that one, I think, at that stage of the tournament. And there is something about Risk's game that maybe Barty isn't crazy about. Risk loves that, can play Risk can play the ball down the line very well. She can play that forehand. She takes the ball early, she plays a forehand down the line well, and she's able to, she's not afraid to tack the net. And sometimes that's where, if you rush Barty's backhand, and first of all, if you rush her backhand, she struggles with backhand passing shots at times, and also even it takes the slice away from her. If you've got a player that's willing to kind of hit a forehand down the line and follow it through, the slice isn't half as effective, and so maybe that's one of the reasons why Risk is dangerous. Having said that, you'd still fancy Barty against Risk, and maybe Risk won't even get that far, although, because Risk has a very, very bad record at the Australian Open. However, the interesting about Risk, I don't think that really matters, because Risk is a completely transformed player over the last 6 months. Ever since she won those 2 titles on grass and then got to the Wimbledon quarterfinals, I think she was in Holland Hertingenbosch, I think that's how you pronounce it, where she beat Burtons in the final, and we had her backed at 50-1 that tournament. And it was like Burton's used to be the ultimate choker and bottler, and there used to be times where you could see Risk winning a match in the third set she'd be 5-2 or 5-1, and you would be fearing that she's still going to lose it, basically, because you've seen it so many times before with her. And now it's the case where you see someone beating Risk 5-2 and you're like, oh god, this is Risk in the space of 6 months. This is Risk. This is not over until the fat lady sings, kind of thing. And just all you have to do is ask the likes of Burtons and Belinda Bencic about that. So she's a transformed player, so I don't think her Australian Open record matters, because before she used to be someone that struggled mentally, big time mentally, and now all of a sudden she's got her mentality back, so she is dangerous. I know some, like, she got Yafan Wang in the first round, but I'd fancy, I'm not going to bet it because the price is about right, but I'd fancy her to win it, and I think she's a more dangerous player to Barty than Martic is. And obviously Martic isn't coming in here with a lot of form. Finally, Kvitova or Keys. Kvitova obviously would be the worst case scenario, but with Kvitova, you just never know. You can never be sure. One of them is going to take each other out anyway, Kvitova or Keys, which is nice. Barty would probably prefer it to be Keys. Or to be Keys. She got a 2-1 head-to-head record against Kvitova, or against Keys, and obviously Kvitova gave Barty a bit of a beating last year, but Barty has pushed on since then, become a Grand Slam champion since then. So she is available at 2-1 to win that quarter, Barty, and I just can't quite. I'm gonna stew on that. I think it's not bad. I'm gonna have to stew on it for a short while. But you have to look. The point is, I think you have to back it. I think what you have to do is you have to put a euro. Or no, not a euro. Put 1 point. You have to put 1 point on Barty to win that, and your plan should be, if she plays Kvitova in the quarterfinal, you can cover. If it's not Kvitova, you let it ride, because I'd fancy to beat anyone else in the draw. And Kvitova could be beaten by Alexandrova in the third round. That's a tricky one. Alexandrova has been in great form. She's going to like the conditions, a good fast court. She's got her first title under her belt this year as well. So yeah, that's a 1 point on Ashley Barty to win quarter one at 2-1. Now, I'm not convinced she's the best player in the world. I know she's world number one. I still there. She won Roland she won Roland Garros very well, but she didn't really play a top player. Anisimova and Vondrousova in semi-finals and the finals, both massive talents, but very, very soon for them to be winning slams. So she kind of did get a bit lucky. But anyway, go on to quarter two, and this is a stacked quarter with Osaka. The main ones: Osaka, Serena. You've got Yastremska there, of course, and you've got Stevens there. Wozniacki is in there. Coco Gauff, Venus, all of them are in there. So it's a tough one. And then Kennan's in there. So this is probably the toughest quarter of the lot. Osaka's route would be Buskova, then probably Zheng, maybe Coco Gauff or Venus, Stevens or Kennan, and then Serena. And then Serena's most likely route would be Potapova, should be easy enough. Zidansek should be easy enough. Then Qiang Wang should be easy enough for her. Then Wozniacki or Yastremska, and then maybe Osaka. Now, sorry, I've got a bit of a cold there, so apologies for the sniffles. Really, it just is very, very hard to see anything other than a Serena and Osaka quarterfinal. And because they're both going to get to the fourth round for sure, I think. And Osaka is likely to play Kennan, and Serena is likely to play Yastremska. Now, Serena hammered Yastremska in the Australian Open last year, but obviously Yastremska was very young. She's come on a lot since then. She's reached the final there in Adelaide, lost to Barty, but she was very, very impressive to get to the final. So she could be a tough customer. And Serena's 7-4 and Osaka 7-2. And for me, the value is probably there. It's probably with Osaka. Although it's just basically because I think Osaka Kennan is an easier opponent to play in the fourth round for me than Yastremska is for Serena, for Osaka. So Stevens is in there in that side of the draw too, but her form has been absolutely horrendous. But you have to remember, Stevens still always, even last year she had pretty poor form, but she always performed pretty well at the slams, and she's the most interesting price of this quarter of all, 33-1 to win her quarter. It's kind of, it is actually quite tempting. I don't really see it, but it's one I just thought I'd let you know. It's with Paddy Power, 33-1. Maybe keep an eye on our Twitter handle, because we might actually go for it in the end if we maybe hear good vibes from an interview that she's kind of focused again, because but she has to play Xiao Zhang in the first round. That's not an easy one. So look, I don't know. I really don't know about this one. I'm tempted by Osaka at 7-2. Serena's 7-4. The thing about Serena, she's so likely to be in the fourth round. And then would you take her at 7-4 against Osaka? Probably, but I'd still make Osaka favourite. If it gets to the quarterfinals, I'd make Osaka favourite in that scenario. So for that reason, 7-2 seems like the more value for Osaka. But just going to maybe hold out on that until tomorrow, and if I decide to pull the trigger, I'll be posting it on the WhatsApp, or not the WhatsApp group, but Twitter. So quarter three, we're going to go through that very quickly. Let me see. Quarter three, we have Bencic backed at 50-1, and we tipped her up at 50-1 with Ladbrokes. She's into 33-1. I thought she'd be quite much shorter. She hasn't, much shorter, but she has a decent draw in quarter three. This is Smidlova, Samsonova, Kontaveit, whose fitness we're not sure about, Sabalenka in the fourth round, and then it could be Halep or Collins. Okay, so maybe it's not as it's not as easy as I thought. But the first, you'd fancy her in all the first three matches. Obviously, Kontaveit would be a tough opponent maybe in the third round, but she'd win it. Sabalenka 16-1 outright. I'm still very, very skeptical of Sabalenka. She keeps letting us down in the big tournaments. She looked like she was going to be a top player last year, and Anisimova gave her a right beating in the Australian Open. Yastremska beat her in the semi-final. She beat Halep in the quarterfinals at Adelaide, but the thing about it was, look, Halep is just one of those players. I don't think she's that interested in going that too deep in the warm-up events anymore. And then Yastremska beat her in the semi-final. Like, she's in good form, obviously, but I don't know. I think I remember, was it at Dubai or Doha or somewhere like last year? I think it might have been Dubai, where Bencic took match points against Sabalenka. Or saved a load of match points against Sabalenka, and I felt like Sabalenka was never the same player since. Mentally, she would mentally collapse in a lot of matches. We'll see if that's the case this time. Halep or Collins. Now Collins hammered Bencic this week, gone past, and Collins reached the final at Adelaide and really was very unlucky to lose in the final set tiebreaker. And she is 9-1. Bencic is 9-1. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one to call. You got Halep's line is Brady. That's a tough first round match. I could see Halep definitely drop a set there. Then you got Harriet Dart, maybe, or Misaki Dua. Should be able to take care of that. Then it's Collins third round. So Halep, she's 7-2, but you do want to be playing Collins in the third round there. Mertens or Muchkova, if she got through, she would. No, I've no doubt she would beat Mertens in the final. Even though Mertens did beat her in a final last year, I think. And maybe that was Dubai, and maybe I'm thinking of Indian Wells where Bencic won. I can't remember from last year anyway, but I'd still fancy. I don't really rate Mertens as I think Mertens is I define Mertens as a top of the B list player. She's not an A list player. She's a top of the B list player, and it could be, and then it would possibly could be Bencic in the final. So in the quarterfinal. So Halep is one of those ones where she's 11-1 in the outrights. I'd say, especially Brady. She's been Brady in the first round. You wait with Halep. You wait, and you might get, if she managed to beat Collins in the third round. That means we have a zoned in Halep. Sometimes Halep can be very vulnerable in the first rounds. We've seen her lose to the likes of Kanepi and Shepilova and different players in the first round of slams in the past. Xiao Zhang as well at the Australian Open. So she's one of these players that wait and see with her, and then if she gets to the fourth round, then maybe that's the time to back her in an outright, just like at Wimbledon. So I look, I wouldn't put anybody off back in the Collins at 9-1. Bencic 9-1 is not too bad, but look, we're happy with the 50-1, and we'll just 50-1 is good enough. It's good enough. Kontaveit, Sabalenka, Halep or Collins to win that quarter, that's tough. And that's actually at 9-1, that's not value. So just be happy if you back to 50-1. Just be happy enough. We have a bit of value there, and just hope for the best. So finally, the final quarter is with Pliskova. Her quarter, she's and this is with Svitolina. As well as that, and Svitolina is 33-1. And Svitolina, look at this. She's 33-1, but her with I think it's with Skybet, is it? And she goes through Boulter. She's got Baghdadis on her team actually this year as well. So wonder what he bring extra will he bring to her team. But Kelly Boulter, then maybe Lauren Davis, then Muguruza, or is it Sevastova maybe? Then maybe Anisimova or Bertens, and then finally Pliskova or Vondrousova. No, that's not, because even Davis could be dangerous in a second round there. So that's not a very likeable draw really. I don't see Pliskova is the favourite, but at the same time, I'm not crazy about any of the bets here. The one thing I will say is that we did tip up Anisimova on the thing for a half point each way, and she's got Diaz. I think she has beaten Diaz, Blinkova, then maybe Bertens. Bertens has some. There have been some injury concerns, but I still think Anisimova has to beat into Bertens. And then Vandrousova or Kerber. Now, Kerber is as big as 66-1 for the Australian Open, but her form has been so bad. But the thing about that, because Kerber is 66-1, I would say keep an eye out just in case, because we know she's won a Grand Slam 3 times, just in case, keep an eye out for one great performance, and hopefully some bookie is sleeping and you might be able to get something like a 50, or you might still be able to get a 50 or 66-1 if it looks like Kerber has found something, but she's unbackable as it stands. So yeah, but as it stands, you're happy enough that you're in Kerber's side of the draw. And then Anisimova will be due to play Pliskova in the quarterfinals. We'd have to be happy enough with that at 66-1. Vandrousova is dangerous, but she's only back playing tennis, and obviously was given a bit of a hiding by Barty, who seems to own her anyway from a matchup point of view. So look, the half point each way and Anisimova at 66-1. We're happy enough with that. Okay, so let's just go to our match bets on the outrights. So the outrights we have is obviously we've tipped up. We are on Barty at 18-1. We're on Anisimova at 66-1. We're on. I had to go with. I didn't tip it up, but I went for Yastremska at 66 as well. Don't love it, but on Vandrousova at 80s. Don't love it, but these are these are really young players with great potential, and then Bencic at 50. So we've got a lot more outrights in the women's, who I think have fighting chances, and hopefully you've been following those tips, and you're going to come along for the ride with us on those. Who do I think is going to win? Look, I think whoever wins between Serena and Osaka in the quarterfinal is going to be very tough to beat. That's how I see it. It's a really tough one to call. If you had to put a gun to my head who I think is going to win the Australian Open this year, I would still say I'm going to say Osaka. I think she's in a good place mentally at the moment, and yeah, I like her. I like her draw. Obviously, Serena's a big danger, but she's a 4-1 favourite. Kvitova at 22-1. If she looks good for the first match or two, and she's down to maybe 16-1, then she might start looking a bit backable. But we will keep an eye on all that stuff for you. On the exchange, there's nothing really crazy going on the exchange. Obviously, our girl, Muguruza, Collins is 50-1. That's probably a better price than it seems, because she's been in unbelievable form, but we'll talk about her later on. Muguruza 66-1. I'm not going to tip her. I'm not going to tip her, as tempting as that is, but the prices just keep on getting bigger and bigger. But until it's got to the stage now, she's not hitting. Her backhand is too suspect. She's not hitting it well enough. So she's not going to win a major spurt, certainly not on a hard court. So now we've went through the outrights there, so let's go straight into my favourite part, which is the match betting. So first match I'm going to talk about is actually a men's match. It's a match between Tennis Sandgren and Trungelliti. Trungelliti's the player, the Argentinian player that's famous for being a whistleblower regarding players who have been match fixing. But he's also a pretty good player. Most of his best results have come in clay. He has beaten Cilic in the French Open in the past, and he came through qualifying this week at the Australian Open. So that's a sign that he's playing well. But Sandgren, I'm going to be going against him here. Sandgren minus 5.5 at evens. Now the match price for Sandgren is 1-4. So at 5.5 games, minus 5.5 games, that means he has to win by at least six games. At evens, Sandgren has won the only match they played at 6-3, 7-5. He won by 5 games in straight sets in 2017 in a challenger event in America. I don't think it's really that relevant, but I think really he's just a step up. Sandgren has become a really good player. He's been a really good player in the last 18 months or so, the last 2 years or so. Obviously, he had that run to the quarters at Australia a few years ago. a couple of years ago, 2001, 2018. He won Auckland last year, and probably was a bit tired when he played Nishioka in the first round last year. But he won a match. I think he met Venus and then lost to Isner in Auckland this year. But I wouldn't read too much into it. But he has been very good. Like even last year at Wimbledon, he beat Simone, who's a grass court specialist. He beat Fognini at Wimbledon, who actually usually plays quite well on the grass. At the US Open, he beat Tsonga and Pospisil, and before Diego Schwartzman beat him. Now, I just think he is a step up. I think he's a step up for Trungelliti. Trungelliti, he had to go to a final set tiebreak against Giustino from Italy. That's as easy an opponent as you're going to get in the final round of a qualifying event for Grand Slam. He did beat Wolf, the American lad, who has got a bit of potential in the second round. He lost, or he won love 6, 7, 7-5, 7-6 or 7-6, 7-5, I think, and Wolf. But like, I think Sangren is a big step up. And the thing about this one is, I think if you think Sangren's going to win, he's going to win by more than 5.5 games. Just if you just look at Trungelliti, even just in the qualifiers, he lost a set love 6 love to Wolf. Won the match, but he lost that set 6-love to Wolf. He lost a set 6-1 to Giustino, even though he won the match. He lost. So I've seen it throughout his career. He is more than capable of losing a set 6-1, 6-2, or 6-1, 6-love. He's more than capable of that. And then what he is very good at is being clutch in the sets that he is focused on. Do you know what I mean? But he is a very. He doesn't have any massive weapons. He doesn't have a big serve, so it's probably difficult for him to maintain his intensity throughout the whole match, especially if it's a best of 5. So I think Sangren's going to win, and I think even if it goes to 4 sets, even if Trungelliti steals a set, I think Trungelliti's going to have one set where he kind of falls away a bit, and I think Sangren is going to cover that 5.5 games. So 5.5 games at evens with Sky Bet. I have to say that's definitely worth 2 points. So, and even if it goes to 6.5 games, I still think it's probably worth 2 points. So that's how good a bet I think it is. So yeah, let's have a look at what else have we got available to us. Yes, another one is this. Okay, it's another handicap bet, which is Collins. She's going to be playing against Diachenko and Diachenko is a very good player. In fact, the interesting thing about Diachenko is that she, for years did a lot of training in Ireland. Like, just can't believe the Irish Tennis Federation didn't try to get her to change nationalities, because Russia doesn't need Diachenko. And if Diachenko had to join Ireland and started to represent Ireland, can you imagine the kudos she would have gotten and the celebrations she would have gotten if in Ireland that time that she bet Sharapova in Wimbledon a couple of years back, and like I say, Russia didn't bat an eyelid at it there. So I'm going off, veering off on a tangent there. It's just us Irish people were starved of great tennis players. Every other country seems to have somebody competing except us at a high level. But anyway, maybe someday in the future. Anyway, let's have a look. Oh yeah, so Collins. Now look, the Collins is 8-11 at 5 to win this plus 5.5 games. Now that's to win in 2 sets plus 5.5 games. But Collins is just in incredible form at the moment. And when she's winning, she is winning. She is just having no mercy. She's just totally being ruthless. She bet. Who did she beat? Putintseva 6-1, 6-love. In Adelaide, she bet Sasnovich 6-3, 6-2. Kenin 6-3, 6-1. Bensic 6'3", 6'1". She's covering this handicap against much more superior players than Diachenko, and then obviously last year, even when she went on a run, she was hammering the likes of Garcia and Kerber and beating them, and Vic, and obviously Vickery. The first match she went 3 sets with Juliet Gorges, but Gorges was in great form at the time. She had just, I think, had won either Hobart. I think she'd won a Hobart at the time. So Diachenko, now in fairness, has been tearing up the tearing up the ITF circuit. Like, she's been in unbelievable form in the ITF circuit, but this is a big step up for her. She hasn't started off the season great. I think she's lost 6-1, 6-4 to Putintseva and 7-5, 6-2 to Sakari. Both players that aren't as good as Collins is at the moment, and yet both of those players covered that handicap in recent weeks, and I don't see any reason why Collins isn't going to cover the handicap as well, despite the fact that Diachenko did win a challenger in Taiwan in November, but and didn't even drop a set. This is a step up in class. She hasn't really ever. She's been around a while, and she hasn't really ever produced at this level. So I can't. I just can't. I can't see anything other than a convincing Collins win. So 2.75 points. Collins minus 5.5 games at 8-11. Next up, we're going to have a look at. This is going to be a smaller bet. Niculescu to beat Alice Cornet at evens. Now, usually Alice Cornet is someone I love to back against maybe a random qualifier or just some other random person ranked maybe 60 or 70 in the world in the Grand Slam, because usually Alice Cornet tends to bring her best tennis to Grand Slams, so she has been good to me over the years, but I just have this feeling that there's a bit of a matchup issue here. I think the head-to-head is relevant, even though they've only played twice, and the last time they played was in 2016, I think, 2014. Sorry, that's a long time ago, but that's peak Cornet and probably peak Niculescu as well. Niculescu has won both matches. Now, she won, I think, in China in a match 6-4, 6-love. Right, she absolutely hammered Cornet in that match. Now, you could possibly put that down to maybe it just was one of those days Cornet wasn't feeling great. You can never put too much stake into something when it's only two matches head to head. But she also won Australian Open 2012 in 3 sets, but the scoreline was 7-5, 6-3, 6-love. That sounds to me like it might be a bit of a head-to-head issue, and I just kind of was trying to think, wonder what it is that I think Niculescu kind of plays a little bit like probably Santoro used to, and he used to be able to, or Santoro used to, and drives a lot of players crazy. Like she likes to kind of slice her forehand, plays a lot of spins. Can play a lot of drop shots. She's pretty good at the net, and some players are well able to handle it, because a lot of the more powerful players can just kind of hit through the ball and can handle these kind of spins. But someone like Cornet, especially if you're doing the slice forehand to Cornet's forehand, I don't think Cornet likes to have to generate the pace herself. And maybe that's an issue. Also, one of Cornet's favourite shots is the drop shot, and that's something that really isn't effective against someone who's very fast like Niculescu, and someone who's very comfortable at the net like Niculescu. So Niculescu also, Cornet did have a good start to the season, in fairness. She had wins over Martic, Bonaventure and Van Uytvanck, but all those players' form is quite suspect, and then she got hammered by Pegula before retiring in that match, and then Rybakina beat her as well. Niculescu in qualifying beat Kalinina, Tomova and Vogel. Pretty good wins in qualifying. 3 good wins. She's going to be very, very confident, and at the underdog price, I think just 1 point. It's just I just have this gut instinct that there is a matchup issue there. I could be wrong. I think overall you have to say Cornet is the better player overall, but I just have this instinct that there is a matchup issue there. And also I think Cornet, she's surprising, she's only 29. Like, I can't believe that she wasn't in her 30s. Seems like she's been around forever, but she's has been kind of in the decline. Probably Niculescu as well, but just that fact that Niculescu came through qualifying is a good omen for her. Now let's move on. What else we got here? Oh yes, we're talking about underdogs there recently. And I have to say, one of the underdog prices that really struck me was Andreas Seppi to beat Kismanovic at 2-1. I just can't believe that Seppi has been priced so big. Now Kismanovic is one of the highly touted young players. And it's largely down to a run he had in grass court Wimbledon warm-up in Turkey, losing to Sonega in the final, and a run at Cincinnati where I think he bet Zverev and FAA. But like Zverev, a lot of players bet Zverev and even FAA last year. But his record at slams hasn't been good at all. He came into the Aussie Open through qualifiers last year before getting taught an absolute lesson by another veteran, Verdasco, in straights, and he went 5 sets with Clay Hayter, Dennis Kudla at Roland Garros before losing easily to Goffin, which I suppose is no disgrace. But then at Wimbledon, he just about scraped past clay plugger Carbelis, and then he would have to retire against Payer. And then he lost in the US Open. He lost 37-year-old veteran, 38-year-old Paolo Lorenzi. Do you know what I mean? In 5 sets. So for me, Kismanovic has it all to prove. Now the pros for him is that he has some decent wins versus Tsonga, Thompson and Fucsovic, but all those players seem to be a little bit out of form, and he was hammered versus Rublev in Doha. So look, I just feel like he's a little bit underrated. He has it all to prove. Overrated is a young player. Now the case for Seppi. Now Seppi is one of those veterans who's been, for me, has been a bit of a money making machine for in slams over the years. In recent years, I think he's tended to time his best tennis for the slams. You often see that with a lot of the older players, is that they don't seem to have the same hunger all year round to win all these smaller tournaments and that, but they still, if they're established top 100 players, they often just make sure they produce some performances in the big tournaments, and that's what brings home the dough for them really at the end of the day. But he has probably become a little bit more inconsistent during the rest of the year when the slams are on. But at the same time, he's one of those guys who tends to beat who he's supposed to beat and lose to who he's supposed to lose. Like, he's 36 next month, and I think he may be a victim of ageism here, as he's probably had his best results in slams in his 30s, like a lot of players. I've been guilty of ageism myself, and to be honest, because I remember thinking he lost to Peya at Wimbledon, and straight away I said to myself, he's gone, he's got old, he's obviously got old. Like we had a bet, we tipped him up against Peya. I think it was 8-11, which seemed like a brilliant price at the time, and he was up 2-1 and a break, and Peya came back and beat him, and we're thinking, this is a sign that Seppi doesn't have it anymore. But then Peya then went on to beat Raonic and got to the quarterfinals. So sometimes you have to put things into context. But look at it like this, right? Last year he didn't have a bad year. Right, he just had a stinker during the clay season. That was it. He really doesn't like clay anymore. For an Italian guy, he's actually not clay is his least favorite surface. I was surprised myself to see how good his results were towards the back end of the season. Given that Dimitrov reached the quarters of the US Open, losing in 4 sets to him in round 1 doesn't seem too bad. He then went on to win a challenger in Cary and got some wins against the likes of Kyrgios, Garin, Kachanov in October. Albeit they may have been out of form, but the main reason to get behind Seppi is this man loves Australia. By far his best slam, has been to the 4th round 4 times, and in the past 3 years his results read like this. He's been to 3rd round, 4th round. Like, he obviously loves the conditions and doesn't get bothered by the heat. And obviously, I'm not even counting that he beat the great, the years in which he bet the great Roger Federer in 2015, and he also won a classic match versus Kyrgios a few years back too. So even last year he beat Johnson and Thompson before losing in 5 sets to the on fire TFO. So he also reached the Sydney final last year, beating the likes of Tsitsipas. Now this year he played Auckland and he beat Manarino before losing to Edmonton the same day. So look, I see this match as 50-50. Maybe Kismanovic is slight favourite, but at 2-1, I think Seppi represents tremendous value. And Kismanovic has yet to prove his match play credentials. Seppi has one of the best match temperaments in the game. Doesn't have a big serve. Great forehand, but doesn't really have, he just moves well. He's just a very solid player. Like, he doesn't have any huge shots, but he's just a very solid player and mentally very stable. And like, maybe the overs is a great bet here if you get over 37, 38 games. This could be a long game, but I personally prefer the 2-1 on Seppi, and hopefully you back that with us. I think it was with Bet365. I think it's gone into 7-4 now, but it was 2-1 with Sky Bet. Now we're flying through it. So what else will we be able to go from the match bets? If you're looking for a good parlay piece, I really like Barty to beat Surenko. Now, if you're going to back the Barty at 2-1, maybe that's maybe it's enough. You don't want to be putting too much money on the same player. But actually, we'll go. I really just think, if we're not backing Osaka, I think Osaka 1-7 to beat Buskova. I think Buskova is a little bit overrated. Actually, she had a bit of a run in Cincinnati, where she got to the semi-finals before the US Open last year. I think it was at Cincinnati. Could be wrong about that, but she hasn't really done much since. She lost to Bellis there recently, which wasn't a fantastic win, which is a poor enough loss. Just Osaka is at 1-7. You put her in there with. Who else did I have picked out here? I'm just trying to figure it out. All right, so it's so it's going to be. I just think it's a great bet. It is Pair. Pair got to a final. We had him at 20-1, and a heartbreaking loss where he lost 7-6 in the third set. 20-1. But Pair, he's 1-4 to beat Stebe. Pair is just. He's just has been really good the last 12 years, and he's been very, very solid and reliable in these first round matches. And I think he just is going to be too good for Stebe. Osaka is going to be too good for Buskova. I think you should put Barty in there. She's going to be too good for Osaka, and Barty's going to be too good for Surenko. So at 4-6, those were the three that I had picked out. At 4-6, you put them all in together at 4-6. Put 3 points in that. I just really find that's a parlay piece that I just find it very hard to see losing. So 3 points at 4-6 with Paddy Power. That is where the best prices I got those at. I'm very surprised myself to see Kanepi. Money come in for Krejcikova against Kanepi. This is one where Krejcikova, she's had 3 good wins. In fairness, they're good wins in the Australian Open qualifiers. She bet Bonder, Lepchenko and Vickery. All right. But she's had losses to Begu, recent losses to Begu and Hard Vogel, Babas. She doesn't really have any hardcore credentials at all. Last year in the Australian Open, she lost to Ponchette. I did actually manage to see some of her match. I don't know what happened with Vickery. She hammered at Vickery, and maybe Vickery wasn't well or something. But I saw some of the match against Lepchenko and even some against Bonder. I wasn't that impressed against Bonder. I was more impressed against Lepchenko, but there was a lot of moonballing going on. And Lepchenko really wasn't able to hit through it. I don't think someone like Kaya Kanepi would have any patience for moonballing. I think Kaya Kanepi has the power basically to hit through. That's to hit through someone who's trying to plug against her. So if you're going to try and plug against Kaya Kanepi, as long as Kaya Kanepi comes in there fit. She has a great record in the slams. I think she's become one of those players where she generally brings her best tennis to the slams. Now, probably she's better at the US Open than she is at the Australian Open. She's been a player that's been to the quarterfinal of all the slams. All the slams except the Australian Open. Her best result is the third round of the Australian Open. But to me, she's a class above Krejcikova, and I can't believe that this is Pickham. I can't believe that she's gone into 10-11 to beat Krejcikova. There might be some injury doubts or something like that, but if I hear any sort of find any sort of quote where Kanepi saying I'm fit, I'm ready to go, I'm definitely going to go 2.2 points in Kanepi. Look at what Kanepi has done in the last year or two. Roland Garros, she got to the fourth round. She beat the likes of Gorges, Kudermetova, Zhang. 2018 foot round the US Open, she lost in 3 sets to Serena. She beat Halep that year. Third round at the Aussie Open that year where she beat Sibylkova and Puig. Last year she pushed Halep to 3 sets at the Aussie Open. Like, she's a quality player. At Wimbledon, she lost the Bencic, obviously, but in the US Open last year, she was it the US Open that she won in 3 sets against Tatiana Maria. But basically, if all I'll say, keep an eye out. If I see any, hear anything about a quote from Kanepi that she's fit, 2.2 points on Kanepi to beat Krejcikova at 10-11. Also, another bet that I like, another one that I'm thinking about doing is Tatiana Maria to beat Cici Bellis. I think if the price gets to around 11-4, 3-1. I haven't fully decided to pull the trigger yet. I just think Cici Bellis she's only back playing. The head-to-head is 1 each. But Bellis, is she really match tough enough? Maria can be quite a frustrating player at times. I think Bellis prefers to play people who give her that bit of pace. I think Maria's going to be frustrating her a lot with her maybe a bit of moonballing, playing the slice a lot. She's not the easiest person to hit through if you can't generate your own pace. I think, if it gets tight, Bellis, has had such a lack of match practice that you could think that maybe it would be Maria would win almost by default, that she could force errors out of Bellis because Bellis gets tight, because Bellis hasn't been in this situation in a long time. And she's done okay since she came back. She has a good win against Bouzkova, but Bouzkova threw that one away. Bouzkova was 6-3 3-love up and she lost that match. And the other, maybe a 3-set win against Levchenko. I mean, that's not unbelievable by any means. She's had other losses that come against Flipkins, Pegula and Kudermetova, and Flipkins is a similar enough player to Tatiana Maria. So I kind of think Maria has been a little bit undervalued here at 11-4, and I'm tempted to put a half point on Tatiana Maria at least, just for an interest. I think she especially if it gets close, she could be the more likely winner. Now her form isn't amazing either, but she at least has a win over Han. But she doesn't have great form either, I'll be honest with you. But she's one of those players that does tend to show up for the Grand Slams and win those kind of matches where she's supposed to win, where she's in with a chance, and then lose the ones where she's also supposed to lose to. So yeah, just want to keep an eye out for Harriet Dart 4-6. I already tipped it up on the on the site. Oh my God, 1 hour 30 minutes. So okay, I'll blast through this. Harriet Dart is 1-3. Or it was 4-6 to beat. She absolutely hammered everyone, including Nicole Gibbs in her qualifying. Misaki Dua can be pretty tricky, but I think Harriet Dart is on a trajectory upwards. I think she's a really class player. The fact that she's hammered everybody in qualifying, and some good players. Misaki, I think you'd have to make her a bigger favourite than that against Misaki Dua, who's just been so erratic in her form, over the last few years. She can play incredible tennis at times, Misaki Dua, but she's also a bit of an unforced error machine. So as long as Dart plays pretty solid, I think she wins. The price might change. Another one I liked was Larson against Badosa. Larson came through qualifying really surprisingly impressively. I think she beat Manella, and who was the last player? Gracheva, the very a player with great potential. So I really do like Larson to beat Badosa. Badosa has never won a main draw match at the Grand Slam, and I've seen her in positions where she could win main draw matches. Even last year against Flink, for example, at Wimbledon, and she bottled it a bit. I think if it gets to that sort of tight stage, I think she's more likely to bottle it than Larson. So I like a 2.75 bet on Larson, 8-11 there, especially given her form in the qualification. Who else are we going? I think Schwartzman is going to beat Harris quite comfortably. This is a step up. I know Harris got to the final there of Auckland, but he got hammered by Rublev, and I think this is sort of off the ground, Schwartzman is going to have such an edge over Harris, and I think he's going to cover the 6.5 handicap. But wait for my bet on the Twitter handle for confirmation on that. Leonardo Mayer is beginning to look backable at 5-2 against Tommy Paul. Tommy Paul has won 22 out of 24 matches of his last 24 matches, but he has won them all, most of them at challenger level. This is a step up over 5 sets. Mayer is one of those guys that kind of, a bit like Kanepi and maybe even Seppi, that kind of doesn't produce great stuff all year round, but generally shows up for the slams. So at 5-2, I'm just going to keep an eye on that. Who else was there? Novak at 3-1 could give Herkas a bit of bother. Bench Retreat at 9-4 could give Sajita a bit of bother. That's worth looking into. I quite like Jabeur against Konta. Konta, played one match. She lost out to Strakova this year. She hasn't played since the US Open. I think Jabeur is an underrated player. She has had some good recent wins of late. In Hobart, lost in the quarterfinals to Muguruza, who actually was playing pretty good. It was a final set tiebreak. And the thing about Konta, there's massive question marks over her fitness, and Konta's not one of those players who can turn it on like a tap. She needs to play herself into form. So I'm thinking about backing Jabeur at 6-4 there, but just bear with me on that one. Let me see now. Who else is there? I was thinking about João Sousa. If I can get any indication at all, any sort of quote or something from him, just to say that, to just confirm to me that he's not injured and that he's motivated for this one, I think. He should beat Delbonis. He's a much better hardcore player than Delbonis. He's been to the third round of the Australian Open, I think 4 times. Delbonis has been there once and never won another match in his whole career, and yet Sosa is 4-5. The only thing about Sosa is sometimes he can just turn up and have an absolute stinker, but sometimes you just have to take that chance, because he is, even though they're head to head, they've played mostly in clay, is fairly even. And actually, in fact, matter of fact, Delbonis has won the only match in hardcourt. I don't think it's relevant when it comes to slams. Last year, Sosa bet Kohlschreiber. He bet someone else who was pretty good. I can't remember who it was. He got to the 4th round at Wimbledon. He beat the likes of Dan Evans and Marin Cilic. Like, he's a big game player. He likes to slam. I say he likes the slams, and then he can turn up to a slam and like he did in the US Open and lose in straight sets to Thompson. You just don't know what you're going to get from him sometimes. But maybe we should wait until the match starts and you can have a look to see what's he looking like for the first few games, and then back him if you can still get a pick and price, because he's a much better player in my opinion. Other than that, I think that's most of them. We'll give you a verdict. Who could be on upset alert? Maybe Kvitova could be on upset alert because she plays Siniakova in the first round. Sloane Stephen plays Zhang. Not sure. I don't really know. I can't really say who is on upset alert. I think most of the favourites are going to win, but look, thanks. This has been going on far too long. If there's any other bets I have, I'll post them on the Twitter at Mug Podcast, or you can tweet us at Mug Podcast. Please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, a Mugs Game Podcast. Please share with your friends. Share on WhatsApp groups and subscribe to our SoundCloud. You can also download us on Apache, on Stitcher, on iTunes. And thanks very much for listening. And let's really enjoy. I think it's going to be Osaka to win the Australian Open Women's, and I think it's going to be Medvedev that's going to win the Australian Open Men's. So there you go. They're my picks, not my bets, but my picks. And very best of luck. Hope everyone really enjoys the tennis. Very intriguing few weeks ahead, and we'll be back in a few weeks' time to talk about the Champions League. Thanks and good luck.